What is up, guys? Welcome back to part 4 of What If Ash Was Randomized. Today we will finally be finishing off the Indigo League. It wasn't meant to go on this long, but here we are. Before we begin the what if, let's go over the rules one more time. And if you already know them, just go to the time codes shown on screen. The first rule is that almost all 115 Pokemon are fair game. The second rule is that mythicals and legendaries won't be able to show up until we get to Hoenn. The third rule is that the starters will remain universal. And the fourth rule is that all the gym leaders will remain type locked. So with those rules out of the way, let's get on to the video. We pick up in a small unknown town in the late evening. As our heroes are enjoying their ice cream, Team Rocket attempts to steal their Pokemon and their ice cream. Before they can begin another battle, Wattrel points out something in the sky. When looking up, they spot a large, flat, circular disc with a smoke trail. Whatever it is, it seems to be falling just outside of town. Ash says that it looked very familiar, but he can't put his finger on what it actually was. Up until this guy with the lab coat joyfully screams out that it must be an alien spaceship. Finally, my life's work will be acknowledged. He then starts booking it in the same direction as the ship. Upon hearing that, 4 out of the 6 of them aren't too excited by that idea, as they've already met aliens before, but they decide to follow that guy anyways. Our 3 heroes mainly go out of curiosity, while Team Rocket goes to see if they can steal anything from these so-called aliens. When arriving, they see that lab coat guy freaking out over a massive ass spaceship just outside of town. The man then introduces himself as Oswald, a scientist who has been searching for extraterrestrial life. As Oswald's telling them about his theories, how Wailords are from space, Team Rocket decides to play along until they can somehow get inside the ship. That way they can take the Twerp's Pokemon and this spaceship all in one fell swoop. Eventually, after minutes of trying, the door finally opens, and a single injured Pokemon steps out. Ash and Team Rocket instantly recognize it as one of the LGM they met in Gringy City. With the help of Electrike, they find out that something aboard the ship has injured it and its friends. LGM is hoping Ash and his Purloin could help them once again. Unfortunately, Ash has to tell LGM the bad news that Purloin isn't with him right now. But he has 7 badges under his name, which means he can handle anything at this point. It's decided that Misty, Ash, Oswald, and Team Rocket will enter the ship while Brock tends to the psychic type. Upon entering, they quickly realize how cold it is in there. It's so cold that they can see their breaths. Because of this extreme cold, they send out whatever fire types they have, such as Fuecoco, Torcat, and Monferno. Wandering further inside, they see indents in the wall and ice forming around certain parts of the floor. Eventually, the time comes when they realize that they really haven't found anything, so they decide to split up. While they explore, the main power of the ship gives out, forcing the much less powerful backup power to come online. With these dimmer lights, they soon enough start getting picked off one by one. First, it's James, who stopped to pick up an ultra rare bottle cap. Shortly then after, Electrike and Jesse have noticed that James has pretty much disappeared. And while looking for the exit, Electrike sees a small black figure moving towards him. While he is ready to run away, when the figure steps into the light, he sees it's an Electrike. And on top of that, he recognizes it as Ellie, the Electrike who he learned to speak human for. Ellie goes on to apologize for how she treated Meowth in the past, and that she should have never rejected him. Despite his more logical side questioning why is she here and what is going on, Meowth's heart wins the battle as he runs towards her, proclaiming his love for her. Meanwhile, Jesse's on edge, running through the hallways as she has seemingly lost her 2 friends. This is when she bumps into someone, causing her to fall flat on her ass. With anger overtaking fear for a moment, she doesn't realize that she actually bumped into 2 people. Those people step into the light, revealing themselves to be her mother and Meltan. Jessie is unsure of how to react to them being here, but any uneasy thought quickly vanishes when her mother extends her arms out for a warm embrace. Jessie runs to her mother crying as if she were a child again. A few minutes later, Ash suddenly finds himself on stage in front of thousands of people, being handed a trophy by Professor Oak that reads Greatest Regular Pokemon Master. Not too long after, Misty and Oswald start seeing things too. Misty finds herself surrounded by hundreds of water-type Pokemon she's never even seen before, while holding a trophy reading Greatest Water Pokemon Master. Oswald finds himself on a planet full of aliens he can examine. Soon enough, it's only Fuecoco, Torcat, and Monferno left, as their trainers are nowhere to be seen. Eventually, through wandering the ship, they run into each other. More specifically, Monferno and Torcat run into each other, and they find Fuecoco in the kitchen trying to eat a can of beans. Together, they run throughout the entire ship and eventually enter the cockpit, where they see their trainers as well as the LGM have been frozen solid, and in front of them is a Mr. Mime. When the cat and monkey demand it release them, Mr. Mime instead gives them a backstory, revealing that it was one of the Mr. Mimes who attacked Porta Vista. It was angered that its brethren gave up on destroying humanity so easily, that it decided to follow the three responsible for this while it plotted its revenge. However, when it saw the LGM ship in Gringy City, it decided to climb aboard, thinking it could use the ship to somehow achieve his dream. But instead, it bided its time to take revenge, and now it'll freeze over the entire world with its power. It was able to easily freeze all of their human trainers because it used its psychic abilities to make them see themselves accomplish one of their many desires. And if humanity is that weak-minded, the entire world should be no problem for the likes of him. Just as Mr. Mime finishes its evil villain monologue, Fuecoco casually walks up to him and bites his leg. This sorta signals to the others that they should also be attacking the Mime. However, despite being outnumbered, Mr. Mime's psychic powers are more than enough to hold him back individually. It takes them comboing Fuecoco's Fire Blast, Monferno's Flame Wheel, and Torcat's Overheat to finally put down the Ice type. Once it's down, they begin to thaw out the humans and Pokemon. Once he's thawed out, Oswald catches Mr. Mime just to make sure that it doesn't try to hurt the aliens again. And despite having just been saved, Team Rocket tries to steal from them again, only to be quickly blasted off. Now that the LGM have been saved, Oswald decides to stay with them and help repair the ship, since Ash and Co have to be going. After this, the gang arrive at Viridian Gym, where Ash has to battle Team Rocket for the badge. Their first set of Pokemon are Sandygast and Roselia. It's not a very long fight as Sandygast gets taken out with a few Bullet Seeds and Razor Leaves. Their second Pokemon is a Wormadam, and this proves to be a bit more of a challenge because of the bug typing. While the bug typing does prove to be kind of an issue, Roselia is able to tough out the attacks and ultimately get the win. This gets Ash feeling really full of himself, as he's already won 2 of the 3 battles without losing a single Pokemon. Team Rocket's final Pokemon is a Great Tusk, who quickly shows why it's the Vermilion Gym Leader's ace Pokemon. The prehistoric Donphan tanks any grass type moves Roselia can dish out. It just stands there, menacingly, before it takes out Roserade with a close combat. And while Roselia does lose, close combat activates Poison Point. With Roselia out for the count, Ash is forced to swap out to Buizel. However, much like Roselia, Buizel struggles to land any significant amount of damage on the Great Tusk. It's only halfway into this battle that Ash realizes the only way he's gonna win this is if he runs out the clock with Poison. It's something Ash really doesn't want to do, but he sees no way around it. So that's what Ash does for a while, having Buizel use Rain Dance so Swift Sim can give it an easier time dodging attacks. However, the Great Tusk has a really easy counter for this, as he uses Sunny Day to get rid of the rain. They go back and forth, changing the weather, until eventually Great Tusk gets sick and tired of listening to Team Rocket and just goes to attack Buizel. While its first attack, Close Combat, just narrowly misses, its second attack attack, Headlong Rush does hit. While Weasel looks like it can get up for another round, it does not. For Ash's final Pokemon, he was gonna go with Larvitar, but this Mammoth would have made quick work of him. So instead, he decides to go with a much more safer option, Delibird. Thanks to its ability to fly, it's able to stay out of range from Tuska's attacks. Even when it uses Sunny Day to bolster up its attack stat, the lack of ranged moves really caused its downfall. Because of this, Ash's plan of running out the clock with poison comes true, and that's how Ash earns his final badge. On his way back to Pallet Town, Ash encounters a Toxtricity that his mom ends up taking in. Somewhere in Kanto, one of the Team Rocket headquarters explodes and 3 small figures are shown flying out of the smoke. Meanwhile, Ash and Gary have reunited at Oak's lab, where we find out that the 2 trainers that left Pallet Town alongside them, they stopped challenging the gym to become a coordinator and a Pokemon Ranger. They also find out that the league will be held in 2 months. And because of this, Gary challenges Ash to a battle. Of course, Ash accepts this and they send out Tyrogue and Swalot. But as the battle's gonna begin, Team Rocket shows up to put a stop to that. Once they blast off Team Rocket, Gary doesn't really feel like it, so he leaves. We then have the 2 months of training before the league. In the events of the evolution solution, because Professor Westwood V has a Huntail instead of Slowpoke, Jessie can keep the Natu she catches on the beach. Instead of a psychic surfing Pikachu, we get a psychic surfing Furret. In that same episode, Patrat learns hypnosis from training with the Furret. In Make Room for Gloom, both Purloin and Impidimp learn new moves from a Samurott. Those moves being Foul Play for Purloin and Dark Pulse for Impidimp. After that, our gang help out a director make a movie using Ash's 2 Tyrogues. One of them plays the young, inexperienced protagonist being trained by an older, wiser Chestnut, while the second one plays its mean rival who's being trained by a world-renowned Lucario. After they've helped the director film the movie, the gang find themselves next to the sea prepping for lunch, when this guy named Raymond challenges them to a battle. Using Patrat, Seismitoad, and Larvitar, they defeat Raymond's Pineco, Torracat, Cufant, Drillbur, and Joltik. After they finish the battle, Ash and Co sit down to eat when a Satotl shows up and gives Ash an invitation to a special gathering on New Island. They do learn that a storm is preventing everyone from getting to New Island, but this doesn't stop our heroes, as they board a boat with Team Rocket and they nearly drown, but nonetheless they still make it to New Island. The gang then meet up with the only other 3 trainers who have made it. The person who invited them then reveals themselves to be a Mesprit. It explains how humans had experimented on it and its brothers, and thus it hates humans. We then have the clone battle with Corey and his Ceruledge against Mesprit's Armarouge. Despite the clone beginning the battle with a type disadvantage, all it takes is 1 armor cannon for the ghost type to fall. After that, it's the battle of the Floatzuls, which turns out to be pretty much the same, as the clone takes the win. Ash and Simisage are the last ones to go, and while they do last a little bit longer than the rest because of Spiky's shield, they ultimately fail, causing all the Pokemon to be taken away and cloned. After Ash emerges with all the originals, he goes in for a punch, but Mesprit's easily able to block it and send him flying to the highest point of the castle. Before he can hit the wall, he is saved by Azoth and Uxie. Through a telepathic conversation, we learn that this Mesprit is a clone of the original Mesprit. The bad guys who experimented on them were unable to catch the original Mesprit, so they cloned their own. After those bad guys had tricked them into crafting the red chains, those guys tried summoning something from another world. However, there were 2 humans who tried to stop the bad guys, but in the process of them trying, something went wrong. The chains wrapped around Mesprit, and before they could say anything else, the pink psychic type flies into a rage, attacking its brethren, causing the originals and the clones to start fighting as well. Much like in the original, Ash is caught in the crossfire of a 3-way attack, and due to the magnitude of concentrated power, Ash is turned to stone. The stadium falls silent at this revelation. Mesprit even seems to calm down for a second. Azoth and Uxie use this moment to ambush Mesprit and rip off the red chain, destroying it for good. Mesprit's whole demeanor seems to change once the chain is off. It goes from being angry and spiteful to one more reserved and apologetic for what it's done. Meanwhile, Ash gets revived through the power of tears. With this sorta happy ending, the trio explain a little bit. The chain seemed to have amplified Mesprit's emotion and powers to an enormous amount. As you see, Mesprit isn't a perfect clone. Whatever Team Rocket did allowed the red chains to affect Mesprit the way it did. But regardless of how Mesprit was born, Azoth and Uxie still love him regardless. Azoth then picks up the clones, in tandem with Uxie, who wipes everybody's memories. And finally, Mesprit teleports everybody back to the port. For those wondering the Pokemon of the other trainers, here you go. The gang next finds themselves in Hollywood to watch the movie they helped make while Team Rocket's Electrike goes through his whole Meowth backstory. Once the movie is done, the director complains that the only ones who came to watch it were the trio and Dahlia, saying that he couldn't afford a screening at Pokestar Studios, unfortunately. Oak then reveals that they only have 3 weeks left until the league starts, so Ash goes to train in the mountains, where he encounters Bruno, who catches a large Solosis. In the following episode, the gang accidentally uncovers the ruins of Pokemopolis. Among Eva's artifacts, Charcadet seems weirdly drawn to this set of armor. Later that night, Team Rocket unleashes an ancient Paloswine that begins wreaking havoc and moving towards the town of Pallet. In order to try and stop it, Ash sends out his team, and unfortunately 90% of his team gets absorbed into the giant ice type. Is when the second ancient Pokemon pops out, which is a Bayleaf. And almost on sight, these two start to go at it. Not too long after, a third kaiju appears, that being a Meowth. All 3 Pokemon start to duke it out, destroying the entire area around them, all the while slowly moving towards Pallet Town. It's at this point that Charcadet finds the armor from earlier and puts it on, allowing itself to evolve into Armarouge. Using its new psychic typing, Armarouge is able to slow down the Titans long enough for them to start knocking each other out. The first one to go is Bayleaf, and then Meowth, only leaving Paloswine. Knowing of its ice typing, Brock's Litleo, Misty's Torracat, and Ash's Armarouge all combine their fire into what seems like a miniature sun to defeat this gigantic boar Pokemon. In the events of Bad to the Bone, after Ash's Larvitar defeats Otoshi's Spritzy, he explains that Team Rocket had stolen his badges. Ash and Co decide to help this guy look for them, but after hours of searching, Team Rocket is unusually nowhere to be seen. Eventually, Ash has to call it quits as they gotta get going to the league. On the way there, they hear of some other chump that got his badges stolen from him as well. Following this, we can move straight into the Indigo League. Against Mandy, Roselia defeats Tortuga, Armarouge defeats an Aeron, and finally, Delibird beats Machamp. In his second round, Ash faces off against a guy named Jameson, who Ash thinks looks familiar. Either way, they begin with Q-Font and Impidimp. It's here that Ash learns that his dark type isn't much of a straightforward battler. It likes to keep its distance and set up moves like Fake Tears, Swagger, and Torment. While it will attack, it's always at a distance. Despite its unique fighting style, it's not enough to overcome the type disadvantage, causing it to lose. Ash's second Pokemon is one of his Litleos, who is able to defeat the baby elephant with a simple Flare Blitz. Suddenly, Litleo seems to get stronger out of nowhere, with Brock revealing that this Litleo's ability may be Moxie. Jameson's second Pokemon is his Tinkatuff, and despite being at a disadvantage, the Hammer Pokemon proves to hold its own, using well-timed brutal swings to stop the Flare Blitz, as well as Stone Edge to stop any long-range fire attacks. Ultimately, Litleo seems to take the win when it evolves mid-Flare Blitz and breaks through the hammer. While she does win, the recoil from the attack is enough to knock her out soon after. Their final Pokemon are Seismitoad and Trico. This is a fairly quick battle as Seismitoad one-shots Trico with a Mud Shot. In his third match against Pete Pebbleman, Larvitar beats his Starly and the dude's second Pokemon is a Pyroar. While Stomping Tantrum would be normally super effective here, it's unfortunate that they're on the ice field as it'd be throwing ice, something the fire type can easily burn away. The best Larvitar can do is use Stone Edge for super effective damage, but ultimately it faints, forcing Weasel to come out. It swiftly defeats the line with an Aqua Tail. After this, we have the battle with Jeanette Fisher, where Delibird defeats a Cranidos, Patrat beats Nidoran and evolves into a Watchog, Larvitar then beats her Overquill. Ash and his friends then meet Richie and his Floette. After becoming friends, they learn that they're gonna have to battle each other in the 5th round. But before that, they encounter Team Rocket, who seem more angry than usual. This is because, of course, Ash had defeated James a while back, and Richie had just beaten Jessie, who's going under the name Jessalina. After escaping Team Rocket and just barely making it back to the stage, Ash and his new friend begin their 5th round battle. Richie begins by sending out an Artibrax and Ash brings forth a Furfrou. This is a double knockout when Wild Charge and Dragon Tail collide. Their second set of Pokemon are Purloin and Armarouge. Thanks to its dark typing, half of Armarouge moveset is useless. After dodging a ton of fire attacks, Purloin lands a critical hit, Night Slash, knocking out the fire type. Richie's final Pokemon is his Floette, who one-shots Purloin with a Moonblast. Ash's final Pokemon is Behem, who doesn't listen to Ash and tries to brainwash everyone there. But it is stopped when these purple balls of pollen hit it and they explode. Behem is pissed off that this little flower fairy would interrupt it. The battle is truly on as both Pokemon fly around the arena attacking each other. After Floette sets up Misty Terrain, the Flower Fairy begins to charge up a move called the Light of Ruin, while the Cerebral Pokemon stays in place and pulls back its head despite Ash telling it to dodge. Just as the blast is inches away, Behem uses Zen Headbutt to send the blast back at Floette, killing it. Behem then goes on to win the league, become champion, and rule the world. At least that's how the Psychic type thought it went. But what really happened is a little different. Behem was able to redirect the blast, however the move was stronger than it thought, leaving the Pokemon all woozy, allowing for Floette to come in and finish it off with the Moonblast. Thus, Ash's league run comes to an end, and Richie loses in the 6th round against Assunta. With his league run over, our gang returns to Pallet Town for a party. Team Rocket tries to ruin it like usual, however they're quickly dealt with. Professor Oak then requests our heroes to go to Valencia Island in the Orange Archipelago to pick up a mysterious Pokeball. Needing a little bit of a pick-me-up from the league, Ash decides to go. Thus, a new adventure begins. However, we're gonna have to cover that some other day. I hope you guys enjoyed this part. So as you can see, I was trying to kind of rotate Ash's Pokemon in and out. That way he gets more use out of the Pokemon that he caught. That way, so it's not just the main 5 that he would use like he did in the original series. So for the Mewtwo movie, I did decide to randomize it into another legendary Psychic type, as I don't think the movie could play out without one. And that's how we got Mesprit being a Mewtwo. I didn't bother randomizing Mew as it would further complicate anything else. That's why its role was taken over by Azoth and Uxie. My first small inclusion was having Team Rocket partake in the league. It's something that was toyed with in the Otoshi episode and then way later in Alola. So that's why I thought, why not, let's do it. Which is why they kept a lot of the Pokemon that they would have stolen in regular episodes and then, you know, gave them back. Which is why James has a Trico. It was from like the P1 Grand Prix episode. It was supposed to be a Hitmonlee, I believe. And I thought, why not? Just let him keep it. Plus, Otoshi and that other kid who nearly gets his badge stolen by Jessie, we never hear of them during the league, so I don't think they're that important. Anyways, I've rambled on enough, so remember to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.